I would just like to back up a little bit about, just with your story and your background of how you arrived at this place, how you decided to become a monk. So could you just give some context of
Sure.
your story and then we'll go into many other aspects.
Yeah, I'll give you a Reader's Digest version of it. So I grew up I was born in India, but I grew up in the States. And so for the longest time, I wasn't very spiritual. I was very much materially oriented. And I graduated at the top of my university and I started to go work in finance and mergers and acquisitions. And so as I was working in this field, I became quite successful. But, there's a saying, um, at the end of the day, you can win the rat race, but you'll still be a rat. And so for me, when I was reflecting on my life, I was becoming more successful, but I was not tangibly becoming happier. And so that had a real big shift in me. And I tried to find that happiness in alcohol, in drugs, in various types of relationships. And none of these things really satisfied that deeper longing, right? And so many of us have that longing. Actually, every one of us has that longing. But for so many of us, we don't answer that call. We sort of put all of these material things on top of it and we suppress it. And so for me, I was the same way. But a moment of grace came into my life where a cousin came and visited me and saw how I was living. And he looked at me and said, "You have to change." I said, "Okay, what do I do?" I said, "Here, read this book." And he gave me the book Autobiography of a Yogi. And I read that book about this great saint named Yogananda who came to the United States, about Mavatar Babaji. And it completely changed my life. Because what happened was I'd still go out and get drunk, but I would just not find it enjoyable. And ironically, I would come home drunk and I would turn off the lights and I would just sit at the corner of my room with my eyes closed, like feeling or trying to do some meditation. I had no idea about any type of practices, but just the feeling of there's got to be more. And so then that whole process made me go on a journey where I went to India and I met my spiritual teacher, whose name is Paramahamsa Swami Chidananda. You had him on your podcast. And being in a presence of an enlightened master, it really changes your view on life. And in that moment, I started to say to myself, I really want to become fearless. I want to really reach my potential. I want to love. And so I said these things to my guru, and he said, "Well, come and live with me and learn." And so directly from India, I went to Germany and I lived with him for almost 8 years.
Wow.
And I never went back to the United States. I never met my family or my friends. And then after those 8 years is when I came back to New York in the middle of COVID and started to teach. And I had some crazy stories in New York, which I'm sure we'll can discuss as we move forward.
So there's got to be, I mean, when you make the big life decision, whether or not you knew it was going to unfold the way it did, a decade later, but that decision to completely switch life paths is such a courageous one.